So this lesson is going to be about using formulas. Okay, you've used formulas in your math classes almost since you've started taking math class. In one way or another, you've used some kind of formula. And we're not going to go over the formulas in this video because you're going to be making flashcards for all of those formulas. So I'm going to put it on you to make sure you have all those formulas, you know what the letters in those formulas mean, and you're able to use them in their most basic, basic way you could use them. What I'm going to do is show you how we're going to use these formulas in your high school geometry class. So I'm going to start with a rectangle. Now, if I were to tell you the length and the width of this rectangle, you could easily find out the perimeter. You could tell me the area. Most of you could probably do it in your heads, and you wouldn't even have to hesitate. But what I'm going to do to this rectangle is I'm going to give you a length and a width, but the length and width are going to be what's called expressions. So the length here is x plus 5, and the width is x plus 2. Okay, and you're going to see problems like this, and you're going to have to be able to work with them. Now, what you're going to be told is to find an expression or you might be told to do something in terms of x. Either way, both of these mean that there's going to be an x in the answer. Okay, and you'll see what that means here in a second. So let's say that we're going to try to find the perimeter of this rectangle. Well, from your flashcard, you're going to know that perimeter of a rectangle is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So the length of our rectangle here is x plus 5, and the width of our rectangle is x plus 2. Now, hopefully, this is a pretty basic problem for you. You're going to distribute this 2, so you're going to get 2x plus 10 plus, distribute this 2x plus 4. Then we're going to combine like terms and get 4x plus 14. So the perimeter of this rectangle is 4x plus 14 units. And that's it. There's no value for x. We're not going to plug it in and find out that the perimeter is really 65 or anything like that. So let's go ahead and do the area. The area is the length times the width. Well, the length is x plus 5, and the width is x plus 2. Now, each of these things, the length and the width here, they're called binomials. And they're called binomials because bi means 2, and they each have 2 terms. They each have an x, and they each have a constant. So they have 2 terms. What we're doing right here is called multiplying binomials, and I'm hoping that you recall the method we use to do that. It's an acronym. We're going to use FOIL. That spells FOIL, and it stands for first, outer, inner, last. Or you could say first, outside, inside, last. It doesn't really matter as long as you get the big idea. So the way FOIL works is I'll start with the first. So I'm going to take the first thing in each set of parentheses. So the first thing are the x's. So I'm going to do x times x. And that's going to give me x squared. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. X squared. Then I'm going to do the outer edges of my multiplication. I'm going to multiply whatever's on the outer edge, which is x, by whatever's on this outer edge, which is 2. So x times 2 is positive 2x. And I'm going to write that into my equation, or into my problem here. And then after I do the outside, I'm going to go to I, which is the inside. So I'm going to do the two things that are on the inside. 5 times x, which is positive 5 times x is positive 5x. And I'm going to write that down. And the last thing that I'm going to do is the L, which stands for last. I'm going to take the last thing in each set of parentheses and multiply them together. 5 times 2 is positive 10. And I'm going to write that down. Now I have what's called a quadratic expression here. Quadratic is because of the x squared. But that doesn't really bother me because I'm not going to do anything else with it except look for like terms. And I have a 2x and I have a 5x. So I'm going to combine those together and get x squared plus 7x plus 10 units squared. And that's the area of this rectangle that we're working with. So I'm going to do another problem now, and I want to be able to still see this problem I just did. I'm going to reference back to it a lot. So let me make another rectangle. So here's my rectangle. Now on this rectangle, I'm going to put a length, x plus 6, and I'm just going to tell you that the area equals x squared plus 7x plus 6 units squared. So we don't have a width. The width is unknown. And you may get problems like this, and what they're going to ask you to do is express the perimeter in terms of x. Okay, and what that means is they want you to basically do this, like we did in the last problem. I want you to do 2 times the length plus 2 times the width and write it out. But we don't know what the width is. The way we're going to find it out is we're going to take this quadratic here, this area equals x squared plus 7x plus 6, and we're going to break it apart into its factors, like this. Okay? This is called factoring. And factoring is basically, you can think about it as unfoiling. So we're going to unfoil it. Now, to be able to unfoil something, you need to understand how to foil it first. So that's why we did all this extra writing up here. So when you look back at the problem we did up on top, okay, this x squared that's in our final answer, well, where did that come from? That's this x squared right here. So that came from the first part of FOIL, right? Our f was x squared. So this is the f of FOIL. I'm going to skip the middle part for a second and go to the 10. Where did the 10 come from? Look back up, the 10 is right here. 5 times 2. That was the last part, right? And I'm going to go ahead and put it equals so we don't think those are negative. So the 10 was the last part. Now we look at the middle, the 7x. Where did the 7x come from? Well, it's right here. It's 5x plus 2x is 7x. And that was from the outside, which was 2x, plus the inside, which was 5x. So this middle term here comes from the outside plus the inside. So we're going to go down here and try to factor this, and we just need to remember where these numbers came from, where these things came from, and kind of undo it. So let's look and start with the x. The x is the first thing, right? Or the x squared, I'm sorry. That's the first, right? That comes from this and this. Well, how do we get x squared? It's x times x, right? So that's pretty easy. Now remember, we're going to skip the middle, and go to the last. This is the last part of FOIL. Well, how do we multiply and get 6? The most common response is always going to be 3 times 2, right? So we're feeling good. 3 times 2 is 6. Now, where does the 7 going to come from? It's going to come from the outside plus the inside. So when I do the outside, right here, follow my pen, I'm going to get 2x. When I do the inside, I'm going to get 3x. Is 2x plus 3x going to equal 7x? And the answer is no. So what that tells me is that my 2 and my 3 are not the right numbers. So what's another way I can multiply this last item times this last item and get 6? Well, the answer is 6 times 1. Now, we'll do the outside plus the inside here. Outside, 1x. Inside, 6x. Will 1x and 6x add up to 7x? The answer is yes, as long as it's positive 6x and positive 1x. Now that was kind of a long way to do, because if you would have remembered over here, your length is x plus 6. And I know that area equals length times width. So I really already knew the length was x plus 6. So I wouldn't have had to do the 3 and the 2 if I had been thinking ahead. So the width here is x plus 1. So the width equals x plus 1. So the final, I guess the big finale here is to find the perimeter, is what they asked us to do in the first place. The perimeter is 2 length plus 2 width, which is 2 times x plus 6 plus 2 times x plus 1. We distribute our 2, 2x plus 12 plus 2x plus 2. Move it down just a little bit so I can fit it all in. I look for my like terms. I have here x terms, and then I also have my constant terms. So I get 4x plus 14 units for my perimeter. It's the same as this one. It's just a coincidence though. So if you have any questions about that, be sure to ask them tomorrow, because this is where we're headed with all of this.